Three, two, one. What's going on, folks? Welcome to 34 Questions. I'm your host, 34. And tonight we have a returning guest in the building. Jared Moses is back. How are you doing tonight, Jared?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Thank you for asking. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right, man. It's a Monday. I don't know if you like Mondays, but today wasn't so bad for me. But yeah, for the folks out there who are unfamiliar with the flow of the show, I'm just gonna do the rundown, even though we have a returning guest. But the rundown is we'll do a little bit of a warm up. After that, we'll jump into an icebreaker. After the icebreaker, we'll head to the Wheel of Fate, where we'll spin the wheel, whichever number it lands on. That's how the conversation will flow. And after all that, we'll finish out with the closeout. Sound good to you, Jared?
Sounds great.
It's been a couple years, or almost a couple years, since you've your first visit. We'll probably go through it normally, but also catching up and taking time to just kind of touch base, see how much things have changed, maybe not changed since we last talked. Let's start there, man. What's new with you?
Well, so last time we talked, I was working on a social media, more marketing agency type thing I was doing. It was kind of in the midst of COVID, and things were a little bit crazy as far as that goes. And during that time, I fell into a bout of depression that really took me out, and I decided to put it on hold, and just kind of actually put it on hold is putting it nicely. I decided to basically just trash it, trash the business, and focus on stuff that was going to be more fulfilling for me. Focus on the things that make me happy, and figure out what I'm meant to do. And since then, I have found that my calling is filmmaking. And so as far as when I say filmmaking, I mean like in the sense of it's just like my main thing. It's like all I do now. And that's where I'm at. Before, I know before when we spoke, I was doing, I wrote screenplays and things like that for fun and stuff like that. And then I wanted to do, filmmaking as it was something I wanted to do, but it was just something I felt like I wasn't able to do at the time, because I needed to sort of put food on the table and things like that. But since then, I've just gone all in on it and got a mentor, been putting things together and building a whole brand surrounding that, the Mentally Ill Filmmaker, which is all about navigating me documenting my journey of becoming a professional filmmaker, while also managing my mental health and encouraging other filmmakers to do the same.
That's what's up, dog. I do want to ask, so the project that you had dropped off of, or you just stopped putting energy into, you mentioned that it was something wasn't sitting right with you. What was that, and how'd you come to that realization?
I think what it really was that being an entrepreneur for the sake of being an entrepreneur wasn't really for me. I feel that I have an entrepreneurial spirit, but I think that entrepreneurial endeavors really should, when they say you should do what you're passionate about, that's real. Like, that's a real thing. Because if you're doing it just because, I want to say that I'm an entrepreneur, or say that I'm starting a business, it after a while, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. You're wasting your time and you're wasting your energy. And that's what it was for me. It was just, I felt like, I listened to Gary Vee and the whole hustle mentality and all that. And so it was kind of like, I want to stamp entrepreneur on my profile for the sake of stamping that on my profile, but it's not my truth and it's not who I am. And so focusing on the things that I love is what has really guided me to where I am now. And so, it wasn't for me.
I got you.
Yeah.
No, man. I think I came through to a similar realization before the podcast. I don't know if I had mentioned it to you, but I was doing the clothing brand, and I really enjoyed designing. I really enjoyed like trying to come up with clever ways to spread a message and stuff. But the whole fashion industry, or just that part of the game, I wasn't feeling. It really felt like it was a part of my ego when I would introduce myself tell people like, oh, hey, this is my name and I actually own this brand. And I felt that pressure of always having to mention that second part, because, you know, people are like, oh, you got to tell people about what you're doing. You got to, you know, be proud of your work and stuff. But my identity just became wrapped up with the brand, and I that didn't sit right with me. And I was like, you know, it didn't feel good. Something felt wrong, and I had to like step back from that project as well. Not saying it's dead forever, but, you know, definitely did not want it to be as I didn't want to cling on to it as much as I was feeling that feeling. But
yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, I say the same thing. Like, as far as like entrepreneurial ventures go, I'm by no means done with entrepreneurial ventures. It's just a matter of the entrepreneurial ventures that I'm going to choose going forward are going to be specific to the things I'm passionate about, the things that if I never made a dime out of it, I would still be cool doing it. Those are the things that I really want to focus on going forward. And so I'm working on, there's some things that I'm ruminating on, some ideas that I have that are all connected to what I'm currently doing, helping the community that I'm currently trying to speak to. So focusing on those things, that's really where I'm at. So I'm definitely not done with entrepreneurial work. I think that's always going to be in my spirit a little bit, but I think it's just going to be more hyper focused on what I love. Not to mention the fact that, you know, filmmaking in general, if you're doing it right, is a business within itself. So you have to have a little bit of a business mind to do filmmaking and do it right. Anyway, sure. So yeah.
Yeah, filmmaking, man. Tell me about what joy it brings you, since that kind of drew you towards that part. We talked about screenwriting, but I feel like now it's evolved since the last time we spoke.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, I think, like I said, I've always loved it. I've loved it since I was a kid. Like when I was like 7, I remember my first time ever figuring out how filmmaking works. Me and my mom was bringing me home from a dentist appointment, and we were getting ready to watch Hook, the movie Hook with Robin Williams.
Yep.
And we were going home to watch that, and I was telling her, oh, all the actors and everybody must be getting ready to go to the studio and do the thing live. And my mom explained to me that no, it's a whole crew and they write it and they do all this stuff. And I was so fascinated with the idea of that like all of these people came together to create this thing that's going to live on forever. I have to do that someday. And it's always been this thing in the back of my mind that's something I really want to do. Not to mention the fact that I firmly believe that filmmaking is the closest thing to real life magic possible. It's as close to real life magic as you can possibly get. The fact that you can take a seed of an idea, something that starts in your mind, and then suddenly is on a screen for millions of people to see. Not suddenly, that's sort of understating it, but the seed, this thing that just starts in your brain, this thing you imagined, and then suddenly everyone else can see that. Everyone else can see that thing that you've seen, and that level of telepathy, that level of shared consciousness it's incredible. And I'm in love with the magic of filmmaking. Not to mention the fact that I also am a firm believer that filmmakers, as well as all creatives really, our number one job is to teach empathy. And I'm a big proponent in empathy. And so any business, any organization, any industry that is driven by the idea to teach that concept is for me completely.
I want to ask you, man, how did you get to that connection of creatives, you know, being for empathy, or not duty, but that's comes from my work, is to teach empathy. Tell me how you got that connection done.
So for me, I think that the idea that we are, as creatives, our job is to teach empathy is whether you're, you know, if you think about a song that you love, about heartbreak, about happiness, about joy, or a movie that you saw that paints a character in a not necessarily the greatest light, like let's take or a TV show, like let's take The Sopranos, for instance, right? And you got Tony Soprano. Now Tony Soprano, by all accounts, would generally speaking, be an individual who we consider to be like scum of the earth type of person. However, the more you watch him and the more you watch as he interacts with his family, the people that he loves, the things that he cares about, it teaches us. We begin to feel for him. We begin to root for him. Even though this person is a despicable person, we begin to root for them. Or, like I said, take a song that you love about heartbreak, about happiness, about whatever, that level of connection to someone else's pain, to someone else's joy, to someone else's feelings. We teach people how to examine other people's feelings, how to examine where other people are coming from, other perspectives. We, so more often than not, film specifically is generally drawn from different people's experiences throughout the world, all over the world. And so you're automatically taught to engage other people's ideas, other people's beliefs through art. And so within that, so every artist, in my opinion, is a teacher of empathy. We use metaphor and things of that nature to try to teach people to ultimately feel for other people.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, man. I mean, it just got me thinking, just got me reflecting for sure. I'm a big consumer of art when it comes to just even TV shows, movies, music, sometimes here and there books. But yeah, I don't know if maybe that's why I feel so empathetic to a lot of people, because I've been exposed to so many stories and just I've kind of taken it in and try to listen. And you talk about examining. When people ask me why I watch The Office so many times, like, oh yeah, I'm studying this part. Like, this is what I tell myself. I'm like really trying to figure out these characters and but
exactly. You're trying to connect and figure out these people that are different than you, that come from different places than you, and sometimes they are people that are just like you, because there are some people that we relate to in media that are similar to us, or we wish we could be like them, or whatever it may be. But our ability to connect comes from art. We as human beings have connected with each other from the beginning of the creation of art. It has always been a way for us as human beings to connect with each other and pass that information about what is in the present, what's in the past, and what's possibly going to be in the future from generation to generation to generation. Art has always been used to do that. And so no matter what you're talking about, like I said, film is only a little over 100 years old, but that doesn't change, books, music, paintings. There's tons of different forms of art, and each of them have always been used to teach the generations that come after, or the civilizations that come after, a little bit about what came before. So yeah, and within that, like I said, comes empathy. So
dude, I'm thinking about, like, we talk about film, and you said it mentioned it was like 100 years old, around the ish. But even before that, right, you talk about plays, talk about theater, right. And I'm just wondering how that the first people to act, or first people to be in a play or create that, like, I wonder what was the inspiration and what story they were telling in the beginning. It had to be something super relatable to everyone at that time.
Exactly.
But yeah, man, that's a trip to think about. Now, do you think everyone's a creative, or could be a creative? What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
I mean, I firmly believe that everybody is a creative to an extent. We all have an imagination. Some of us have killed our imagination a little bit, or have decided that it's time to grow up and put away childish things, if you will. But we all have it. We've had it. We're born with that. So the idea that if you can have I believe that if you can have an imagination, you can be a creative. Though that's something that can't be taught. Like, all the other stuff is technical, like, the singing, dancing, the filmmaking, all of those things. They're technical aspects of it, but the truly creative aspects of it purely comes from imagination. And so if you can imagine it, then absolutely, I think that anybody can be a creative. Do I think that everybody should be? No, not necessarily, but
I got you.
But I think that everybody definitely can be.
Not that I ask because I've had this conversation with friends before, especially ones that they don't consider themselves as creative, right? They'll be like, oh, wow, how can you do all this X, Y, and Z. And then I'm like telling them, well, why don't you try? And they're like, nah, I can't do that. That's not me. Or like, that's just not, it doesn't work for them. And then we talk about imagination, and I don't think I've ever really met a person like this, but I've heard there's people that can't even picture, their thought or their dream. It's like the picture doesn't appear in their mind. And I'm like, for real? Like, I feel like
that's crazy.
Yeah. But, so you go ahead.
But I think that people like that may have, and don't quote me because I'm not saying this is absolutely, but if I had to guess, I would imagine people like that have had severe trauma in their life to the point where when they have tried to embrace that childlike sense of wonder, somebody snuffed that out somewhere in their life to the point where now it's kind of like, I don't want to go there, and I don't want to let myself go there. I think it's either that or you end up dealing with, I wrote a blog recently and did a podcast episode on my show called how to defeat fear, basically. And I think that a lot of people think that they can't do things simply because they're afraid to fail at it. And I think the first step to defeating fear is always about accepting the fact that you're going to fail at it. Like, that's just going to happen. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You just have to get comfortable with that. And it's okay. Like, the best lessons you're ever going to learn in life are the ones where you fail, because you'll learn more from failing than you'll ever learn from a book, from a mentor, from a cheat sheet that you can download from somebody's landing page. You're going to learn so much more by just trying it and failing. And because then you'll know, okay, that doesn't work, so I'll try this instead. And I think a lot of people who have that mind state of like, I can't do that. I can't do the creative thing, or like, because I've had people ask me the same thing, like when I've written screenplays or I've written short stories, and they'll read it and they're like, how do you do that? I could never come up with something like that. And it's like, yeah, you could, if you really wanted to, you could. You just have to try and give it a shot. And you're probably going to suck at it at first, and that's okay, but you'll get better if you keep on doing it. So yeah, I think that's normal. But the whole, like, people can't even imagine or picture that's I don't want to say it's weird, because I'm not trying to judge anybody, but like, I've never met a person like that before.
It's different. Yeah, it's different for sure. But I feel like it's been brought up in conversation before, and it had me thinking. And yeah, if anybody's listening out there who is like that, please, let's talk about it, because I want to know more about how the world looks in your view. But I mean,
you're creative yourself, so the fact that you make a podcast is a creative. Me and my friend, I had a friend, we had a debate about whether or not podcasters were creatives, and I'm a firm believer that a podcaster is a creative, simply because you are taking something that doesn't exist and you are bringing it into existence. Therefore, you created it. Therefore, you are a creator. That makes you a creative. So, in your story, your entire, the concept for your entire show is definitely makes you a creative, which is why it's another example of creatives teaching empathy. Your entire premise for this show is about connecting with people and hearing their stories and learning about them and sort of hearing their point of view. So yeah, I think you're a creative, and you are also a teacher of empathy.
Right on, man. I like to believe so. I remember I had a homie, this whole time they knew I've been a rapper. I've been making designs for my clothing brand. And then they were like, oh man, yo dog, I just met or I just came across a true creative. And I'm like, damn man, that hurts. You mean I'm not one? I didn't say that, but it was in my mind. I was like, god damn. But you ever heard of the artist David Cho? Has that name come up for you?
No.
Yeah, if you Google him, look up his story and where he's at in life right now, I can see why he's a true creative, because he's the kind of dude that takes anything and everything and can create this idea, but also make it look good. Like, it feels like whatever's in his mind, he can translate perfectly into any medium. And I'm just like, god damn. So yeah, David Cho, he's an interesting guy. I don't think, it's like He's very polarizing. Some people like him, some people don't. But the way he kind of lives his life is like this radical. He has a show called the David Cho Show, if you ever looked that up. Very similar to my podcast, I would say. I didn't take it from him, but he was very like, he connects with people, and as he's interviewing people, he's painting them at the same time, and he gives them like a portrait at the end. But the conversations are super real, and he likes to call his thing radical empathy. Like that's which, like, even if it hurts, he's gonna go there because he's trying to understand more and trying to like be super empathetic. So yeah, check that out when you get a chance.
No doubt, I definitely will. And I love that. I love radical empathy. I like the idea of that. I've been lately trying to live with radical acceptance and radical honesty. And no matter what, it's not easy. It's not. Especially like radical honesty is not as difficult as I thought it would be. It's just, being authentic and being as honest as possible with people to, I find myself saying no to a lot more things than I used to, because, naturally I'm a people pleaser. That's my general, I hate confrontation. And I find that due to my trauma and the things that I've been through in life, I'm constantly trying to please people. But in just being radically honest, telling someone asks, do you want to do this or do you mind doing this? And it's like, no, I don't want to do that. And I'm not gonna, I appreciate the offer, but it's not for me. And just kind of doing that, it is helping me set boundaries for the people in my life and the things that are happening in my life. But radical acceptance is a little bit harder, especially when it comes to accepting things about yourself and granting grace for things. So like, let's say for instance, I'm interested in I'm supposed to like complete a task by a specific deadline. And in the past, if I didn't achieve that goal, I would be like really hard on myself. I'd get really depressed. I'd get really down. And now with radical acceptance, it's kind of like learning to grant grace, not necessarily not holding yourself accountable, but being able to say, if I didn't meet the goal, it's okay. I'm not gonna talk bad about myself. I'm not gonna shit on myself. I'm not gonna do any of that stuff. I'm gonna accept it. I'm gonna accept me. I'm gonna treat myself the way I would treat other people. Because as I said, I hate confrontation. I hate disagreeing with people, but it's like, it's funny how when you hate confrontation, yet you are willing to be confrontational with yourself. In the sense that you're willing to say bad things to yourself. You're willing to treat yourself negatively or get into that space where you're not being the most positive with yourself. And so I'm learning that I need to set boundaries for other people and set boundaries for myself as well. And telling myself, we don't talk to ourselves that way. And when I find myself talking to myself in a certain way, stopping and saying, no, that's not going to fly here. The way I would defend a friend or a family member, if someone was to talk out of line to my wife or to my mom or my brother or anybody like that, I treat myself the same way. If I say something bad about myself, I stop that immediately and say, we don't do that here. That's not how it's going to go. And it's difficult because I have a long history of doing it, but it's something that's been working and helping me be a little bit more positive going forward.
Likewise, man, for sure. I think I slip into those moments every now and then, and I haven't gotten to the point where I can be like, I say positive stuff and the negative stuff, but I think my thing is like, I tell myself to breathe. Like when those thoughts, when I just get into myself, I don't know what it is, man. I think maybe we're just used to it and we've been doing it for such a long time that like when there's a trigger or whatever, it gets us into that moment, in that mode. And I just gotta tell myself, I gotta breathe, or I gotta like stand up or do something different, because those, I don't know for you, man, but like it's a very familiar feeling. It almost feels I don't want to call it nostalgic, but there's a certain level of like, since I'm familiar with the feeling and I'm familiar with the whole process of going through it, it's like if it feels like that's just how it's supposed to go. Like that's the normal way of going. Like this happens, absolutely. So I should be I say this to myself, and like that's the same cycle. And then in that middle part though is really just be like, no, it's not supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
Or I need to change whatever I'm saying in my mind right now. Which is ongoing for sure.
It's hardwiring, man. That's what it is. Like, I've come to realize, and I had this conversation with my mom, because my mom just started therapy recently. And I've been telling her for years she needs to do it, because I come from a family and I know a lot of families are like this, especially in the African American community, but just in general, like, I come from a family where we don't talk about problems. We don't talk about what's wrong or what's going on. We kind of put that to the side. You know, if you can't do anything about it, if you can't change it, why dwell on it? Move on, you know, shove that down. And I was the first one in my family that I know of anyway, to do therapy, to go to a psych hospital, to live in a group home, to face trauma, like all of those things. I was the first one in my family to ever do. My niece, who we do a podcast that's on hold at the moment, but we do called family therapy, where we come together and we talk about stuff as well. But like, she's the second one in the family that has done that has done therapy. And so with the stuff that I've been dealing with, I've been trying to get my mom to go to therapy and talk to somebody and get through the years of trauma. Like, legit, man, I'm gonna be real with you, like, completely transparent. Like, my mom's father, my grandfather, he was killed by my uncle when my mom was 4. And that's something I know she carries with her
For sure.
Her whole life. You know, she never got to really know her dad. And then she ended up suffering burn. She got burned when she was a kid, like 6 years old. And so she's like, most of her body's covered in burns. And that's also a major trauma that she deals with. It's something that I know she has to deal with it, because I know that growing up I had to deal with it. I had to, you know, kids are mean, you know what I mean? And they would make jokes, they would say things, and I got into a shit ton of fights defending my mom. But anyway, the point is, my mom, as I said, she got into therapy recently, and one of the things that we were talking a lot about is trauma, and how trauma dictates a lot of what we say to ourselves. So a lot of times when we say these negative things, it's not our voice that's saying it. Somebody somewhere of influence in our life said those things to us, or said things like it, and we have adopted that view of ourselves because of that. And we've been telling ourselves these things for so long that we start to think it's us, but it's not really us. It's some for some people it's a repressed memory. They don't know where it comes from, you know, because they may think, you know, like me, I know when I talk negative about myself, some of it I know where it comes from, but there's some stuff that I'm like, where does that even come from? Like, why do you even think like that? And I know that it has to be some memory that my brain is trying to protect me from, that's keeping it down. So like, when you do run into those types of situations where you're like, I don't even know why I would talk like that to myself. I don't recall having, you know, family members or friends treat me this way or any way like that. But it's like, usually that stuff's repressed. You don't even know. But that's generally where that negative self-talk comes from. We're not born thinking negatively about ourselves. Like, that's not something you're born with. It's something that you're taught. Just like we talk about like racism and things of that nature, like those are things that are ultimately ingrained in you. Those aren't stuff that you're born with. So just like we're not born to hate other people, we're not born to hate ourselves. We're not born to dislike ourselves. That's something that we have to be taught to do. So I just find that's why I think therapy is so important, because you can try to get to the root of where that comes from and figure out, you know, who started this. And if you can't get to that, at least understand the concept that it's not you, you know, that it's not coming from you, even though it may be in your voice and it may seem like it's from you, it's not from you.
Got you. I definitely need to find, okay, we could talk about therapy, and finding the right therapist I think is also very important.
Yeah.
I don't know if your experience, but for me, I had pretty cool therapists growing up. It wasn't like, I feel like during COVID I tried to do BetterHelp, and I'm not knocking BetterHelp or nothing like that, but
I tried that too.
It's hard to find somebody you can connect with over FaceTime, and like, you know, it's not the easiest. And I believe the therapist is trying their best and, you know, trying to connect.
Right, of course.
But it's definitely not as easy to find that chemistry.
Absolutely.
I feel like, I don't know if this is a phrase that you have in your mind, but mine, it always goes back to like, life would be better without me kind of thing. And I know where that started. I don't think I was ever told that. I'm like, as you were explaining that to me, I was thinking back, like, was this from somebody else? And I generally, my guilt just came from like my trauma, I guess, from losing my sister, who I was died before I was born, but very like, she felt holy. My parents are pretty religious, so the way they talked about her, the way they kind of pictured in mind, made me feel like, yo, she should have been here instead of me, or like, she could have had a better impact and all this stuff. So definitely that phrase, now that I am reflecting on it, came from, I guess, that trauma. I don't know how else to put it. I used to think that like, I used to think that it didn't affect me. Like, I never knew her. I never like, had that experience or memories with my sister. So like, she felt like a stranger, felt like a ghost, a lot of the time. But I guess that's the impact she's had on me for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sorry for your loss, man. But it, like, truly, like, I really am, and that's a trauma. Like, I think that so often we tend to undersell the traumas in our lives, because we do live in such a toxic society that sort of constantly tries to push us to shrug off or discard things like, that shouldn't bother you as much as it does, or we're so often invalidated for how we truly feel, especially in I hate to make it this, but especially as men. More often than not, we are invalidated more than most, because we're taught from a young age that we're supposed to shrug all that off, shove that down, focus on making sure everybody else is good. As a man, you're taught that you're supposed to provide for your family, you're supposed to take care of the people around you. That's what you're supposed to do, and so you don't have time to delve into all of the minutia of your everyday life, or the things that have happened to you. And that's wrong, like, completely. And it's not to say or dismiss or invalidate women in any way, shape, or form. It's just women as an experience. A female experience is not something I can speak to, as I'm not a woman, so I choose not to address that. As a man, I can address the fact that I know that my whole life I've often been told that my feelings have been invalidated, and that, suck it up, deal with it, man up. Those are things that I've consistently dealt with. And at one point in my life, I just decided I wasn't gonna live like that. That I'm an individual who wears their emotions on their sleeve. My wife even says that, that a lot of guys aren't like me, in the sense of, I'm the kind of guy that'll say, I feel like this, and this bothers me, or this hurt my feelings. And like, that specific phrase, that hurt my feelings, it took me forever to be able to say that, because I used to just resort to, that pissed me off. And the thing that pissed me off was always like a cover, instead of just opening up and saying, you know what, that hurt my feelings, that made me sad. That, hurt or sad, those are not male traits. Those are those are more feminine traits. I shouldn't engage in that. I need to be pissed off more, because that makes me feel more masculine. That makes me feel more like a man. And then eventually I just started realizing, you know what, no, that hurt, that shit hurt, and I don't like it, and it made me sad. And I'm okay with crying, and I'm okay with opening up about how I feel. And I think that when we tend to invalidate our own feelings more than anybody else does. I think we have a tendency to tell ourselves, it shouldn't bother me, or I don't think it, but like you said, I don't think that I used to think it didn't bother me as much, or it didn't have as much effect on me, but that's just invalidating what you really felt. And maybe, I'm not saying you did it on purpose, but it's hardwiring, you know what I mean? And losing somebody, even if you never met them, that's a trauma within itself. Because again, yeah, that makes sense why a person might feel like they may never measure up to who the potential of somebody who didn't have a chance to really get out in the world and do things, and feel like, they could never be, and then And even if your parents or, family never has said that to you, that doesn't change the fact that growing up, you may have seen how much they missed her, how much they cared about, her, and how much that affected them, and then kind of connected that to your own self-worth. And within that, it sort of takes you back a little bit. So yeah, that makes complete sense to me.
Right on, man. I mean, thank you for validating my feelings.
Of course, man.
Yeah, I know my lady would definitely probably appreciate it if I talked about more. Oh, that hurt my feelings, because that I haven't been able to use that. I haven't been able to say those words. I for me, I definitely just shut it down. I think my lady can definitely see a shift in just energy wise, because I am a certain way. But if something like kind of triggers me, it puts me in a bad space, I'm just quiet, and I'm focused on a task, or I'm focused on getting to like the next thing. That's where my mind goes. If I don't have time to kind of like think about it, but if I got the time, then I'm going into that rabbit hole for sure. Do you think? I mean, I just let you know, man. We about halfway through the pod, and I just want to thank you for a great conversation. And I think we could just keep it rolling, keep it flowing like this.
Yeah, I'm with it.
All right, so talk about, do you believe in generational curses? They kind of say that, where sometimes I feel like I'm carrying that too, because the story you spoke about your mother, my parents have similar traumas or similar stories that I think got them to a point where they did the best they can raising me, but I know for them, they also feel kind of like, oh, I could have done better, could have done more, and we all kind of do that to ourselves. And I tried to like let them know that there's no regret or what's the word, but there's no ill feeling for me to them saying like, oh, you didn't raise me the right way, or you didn't put me in right situations to succeed, because I know they were just doing the best they could. Without really knowing how to be parents themselves, or like having that. So yeah, for you, general curses, do you feel like that's something that you're able to just cut out completely, or something you feel like you're still working on?
I'm definitely still working on it. I just had a conversation with my mom not that long ago about there's two things. One, we had a conversation about how my mom, the way that I'm not angry at my mom by any means, but I've come to realize how much some of the things she has done has impacted the way that I look at success and whether or not I can achieve it. My mom was very big on be practical. Even if you don't get, the number one spot, at least you tried, type of person. So be conservative about what your expectations are going to be, and she kind of drilled that into me. So now when I think about my ambitions, my goals, I have to fight that a lot. So like if somebody's like, well, what is your goal for filmmaking, for instance, for the longest time I kept saying, I just want to make a movie. If I could just make a movie, that'd be good. I felt guilty for saying, no, I want to actually be a Hollywood director. I want to actually do that. Not only do I want to do it, I want to make it a goal, and I want to actively work towards that. And then not feel weird about saying it, or not feel like it's not for me. Because my mom always had a tendency of saying, making it seem like, what are the odds that you're going to achieve the thing you want to achieve? There's so many people that want to do the thing you want to do. You're probably not going to do that. So manage your expectations. And I know that it's never been meant in a malicious way. It's never been meant like to tear me down or do anything like that. But it's more of that. It's just where she comes from, and her, how she was brought up. Now, the only difference, the thing that I find funny is that my grandmother is an entrepreneur. My grandmother started a hair salon. She built it. It was built right out the back of her house. It's been there for since I was born, since my mom was a kid. It's been just around for a really long time. But my grandmother, she went to beauty school and did all that while raising 4 kids. and did all that, and then started her own business, and it's been, you know, a staple of her town for the last probably like 40-50 years. So, you know, my mom has seen that, but I think my mom took my grandmother's work ethic, but kind of just left it at that. And so, you know, there's that. And then also some of the other stuff when it comes to, we talk about generational curses and parents doing the best they can, you know, like getting spankings and things of that nature. And just like I said, not talking about your feelings and that kind of stuff. I told my mom, I think that, you know, a big part of it, especially with our community as African Americans, my mom was around during, she was born in 1956. So, you know, she was in the South. She lived in Georgia. So, you know, she was around during some very tough times in the South. And then my grandmother was around, you know, heavily during the Jim Crow era. And then, you know, so my great grandmother, or should I say my great great grandmother, if me and my mom were trying to do the math, but if we did the math correctly, my great great grandmother was a slave. So when you think about that, how close generationally I am to slavery, like this isn't something that happened, you know, 5,000 years ago. This is something that happened, you know, within the last couple centuries. That's, you know what I mean? And that in the way that they were taught to engage, you know, they were stripped of their identity, stripped of their religion, stripped of their, you know, there was nobody asking slaves how they were emotionally feeling. There was nobody saying, you know, how did picking cotton make you feel all day? Nobody gave a shit about that. This was livestock. You don't ask livestock how they feel. So you have people that have been doing that, and a couple generations down. Imagine, you know, if I was a slave and I raised my children as free Americans, I'm gonna teach them things that I know. And what I know is nobody cares about how I feel. Nobody, you know, you gotta get up every day and you gotta do what you gotta do. Nobody cares. And I'm gonna pass that on to my kids. And then my kids are gonna pass it on to theirs, and so on and so forth. And that's pretty much how our family's been. I just got to the point where, you know, things got so bad for me that I couldn't say, I'm just gonna put my head down and do what I gotta do. I couldn't do that. So I think generational curses are definitely still prevalent in my family. I think we're working through it. As I said, my mom's doing therapy. I'm not really doing therapy right now, but I'm working on it. I'm working through stuff, and my niece is doing her thing. So yeah, the generations, we're getting better at handling tough stuff.
I mean, I think you guys are taking a big step already with family therapy. That's the podcast. With you and your niece. Shout out to your niece, man. Like I know.
I'll be honest with you, because you were right. We reached out because we were gonna have you on the show. And what ended up happening that very day is me and her ended up having an argument type of, it wasn't really an argument. It was a matter of some family stuff that was going on, and it shattered my trust. Her trust in me was shattered because she believed certain things about me that weren't true. And I felt like after all the time and years that we've known each other, we've been around, I've known you your whole life, I've always been a person that can be trustworthy. If my word isn't good enough, then we have a problem. And so we ended up getting to the point where we decided we weren't even going to be in each other's lives for a while. We just recently reconciled, so that's why the podcast is kind of on hold at the moment. But we're just trying to feel our way back into things and connect. But yeah, it was a tough one.
No, that's wild. I'm glad that you guys are on the path to reconciliation. And sometimes people need that just time apart a little bit, you know, kind of learn and grow in different ways to come back. You know, in my world, in my life, I almost wish I had that kind of problem with just because I feel like I've definitely kept myself out of a lot of my family's lives, you know, not in a way where I'm like, oh, I don't want to be a part of it, but it's just like I need to continue doing me and doing this until I get to a point. I don't know, sometimes I feel not embarrassed, but I have definitely not reached the expectations that I feel like was given to me as a kid. And I think that little anxiety or anxiousness still comes up even when I am with family or like my cousins and stuff. So yeah, I keep telling myself like, once I get this big crib, that's when I'm gonna invite everybody for Christmas, and we're gonna have like what should have been. And then so for now it's just like, damn, I'm still kind of like embarrassed about it, but I know it's not anything that anyone else cares about except me in my own mind.
I can get that. I get that.
But yeah, man, it's I don't know if your niece is a high schooler or like a college student or anything like that, but
she's in college.
Okay, for sure. I just mentioned it because I've been starting to do these podcasts. I think the last time I talked to you, I want to say, you probably don't remember, but I was probably working at the self-driving company, and then ever since then I'm actually back at the high school I used to work at 4 years ago, and I've been interacting with a lot of high schoolers this past year and a half. Just recently been able to get them in front of a camera, in front of a microphone, and trying to get them to just find their voice. That's what I tell them, is like, the podcasting is helping you find your voice and what you want to talk about and what you're passionate about.
Makes sense.
But yeah, so I mean, in the future, as far as like things growing up, they're probably gonna need some folks to come on, and if you're down, man, for sure, I'll
absolutely
tell them reach out to you.
Absolutely. I'm always open to talk, especially about stuff like this. I think it's really important that these conversations are had. There's so much stigma surrounding all of this stuff, and I know people say that it's better now than it used to be, but it's not. It's really not. And we need to keep having these conversations. We need to keep on talking about it. So I'm always down for that. That's never a problem for me.
Right on, man. And I'll try to steer us into some more things to look forward to. So tell me about the films you've been working on, or maybe some projects that you've just been taking small steps towards.
Sure. Well, before I jump into that, I also want to say that I can relate to you as far as the being embarrassed about your station in life in regards to family members and loved ones. I had the same problem for a while, where I was just worried about, if I'm not, that brings me back to the entrepreneurial, starting the business thing, that I kept feeling like if I could start my own business and have all this money and do all this other stuff, I could impress my in-laws, I can impress my mom, I can impress people that they'll be proud of me, finally. And then I got to the point where, based on I came to the realization that just based on where I am in my life, the things that I have managed to do, what may not seem like a huge deal, like I'm not rolling in Gary Vaynerchuk money, I'm not Elon Musk, I'm not doing any of those types of things, but I mean, I'm a guy who was in group homes, psych hospital. I tried to commit suicide multiple times, almost succeeded 3 of the 5 times that I tried it. I'm a guy who was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and I've been through a lot and didn't have an actual job, like a consistent job, until I was way in my 20s. Like, so many things that everything predicted. If you were to look at my life then, the trajectory of where I was thinking I was going to go versus where I'm at is completely different. And I think that the people that I would have been so worried about impressing and wanting to not be embarrassed in front of, I think that they're proud because of where I'm at. That if God forbid I was to bite it tomorrow, every single person that I know that knows me would be proud of the accomplishments that I achieved, and that has to be good enough. I told my wife not that long ago that I think that the key to it was based off something that Keanu Reeves had said, but it was the idea of living a meaningful life is if you can be truly loved, truly love others, and know that you will be missed when you're gone. If those 3 things can be said by the end of your life, you lived a life of meaning. Doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter what you did or what you didn't do, doesn't matter if you ran a company or you were Joe Schmo who worked in the warehouse at Amazon. It doesn't matter. If you die and you know that you were loved, you truly loved someone else, and that somebody's gonna miss you when you're gone, then you lived a life that meant something. So I would say to you, you have nothing to be embarrassed about at all. You are just judging by the way that you have carried yourself. This thing that you've created is amazing, and I think that it's only going to get bigger, and it's going to be amazing. So if nobody else says it to you, I'm proud of you, and I think that it's awesome.
I appreciate that, Jared.
No doubt.
Yes, it's something that I feel like I'm coming more to. The podcast ever since it started definitely has given me more ease, or more acceptance, I guess, of like what my life feels like it's going to end up being like, because it is something that I feel like I can do forever without even thinking about making money off it. It's like that part doesn't matter as much as like connecting with people, so that's all that matters. I listened to this one conversation recently with I don't know if you're big into sports, but it was odd to me. It was the general manager of the Warriors talking to J. Cole. Now I looked at the YouTube video. I'm like, this is weird. And we hear what they're talking about. Really good conversation. It's called Lead by Example. That's his podcast. So I'm like, that's dope. But J. Cole was talking about how like he's jealous of people who don't have vision, or who aren't a visionary, right? Like in my mind, I get it though. Like I'm a J. Cole stan, but still, I was like, damn, this guy's like saying he has vision so great, and like that nobody else has it. I'm like, I feel it, because sometimes I feel the same way, but I don't think that nobody else can see it. But the way he just said it was like he's jealous of people who don't have the vision, and I'm like, am I? Like, should I be? Because having the vision, or like having this big dream that I can see and kind of like really want to go for, makes me feel like there are things that I don't experience the same way. Like maybe someone else's goal is to have a family real young, like start that. And then but for me, it's like, nah, I got to wait on that family until I get this big thing, And
I get that.
And it really does change a lot of the choices I make, the plans that I have laid out for, my lady, for my parents and all this stuff. Even though, like, for sure, for my parents, it's like, when are you going to have a kid? Like, of course, we want grandkids. And for me, it's like, hold on, wait until, like, it blows up, and then I can give everybody else what they want. But I got to, like, continue working on this thing.
Up to you.
Yeah, so
yeah, I get that, definitely. I can agree with that. I sometimes that is difficult, the vision, if nobody else sees it. And sometimes it's about there's sacrifices that have to be made and nobody else gets it. The nights where you have to tell people I can't go out, or I can't do this, or I'm busy doing this, and nobody else sees that. Or sometimes people have sometimes you can get jealous of people who have smaller ambitions than you do, because you have put so much pressure on yourself to achieve those greater things. So yeah, I get that.
Do you think for you've been able to, like, do you still have that, I don't want to call it pressure, but you still have the vision versus kind of just seeing the vision differently? Like, I think for me, that's what's happening, is where, of course, it'd be great if it popped off and like superstardom came out of it. But for me, the vision is more like, I really enjoy my job at the high school. I really enjoyed the podcast. And as long as I can have time for all parts of all people in my life, then I would be happy. It doesn't really, matter to me at this point. It just feels like it feels so right now that it's weird for me to think like, okay, I need to be doing something crazier or more. Like for me, it's all about just keep doing what I'm doing, be patient, and I think things will just kind of fall through, because now it's at that point where Yana would say like, I'm feeling the love, I'm giving the love, and hopefully something, someone will miss me if things weren't working. But yeah, man, like for you feel similar, or you feel like you're still trying to get to that point?
I think I'm still trying to get there. I think like I'm good with if all I could do is just, wake up every day and make movies, and I don't have to be rich. I don't have to be a multimillionaire or anything like that, but just to have, enough money to be able to make movies, and I don't have to work for anybody else, and I can just do what I want to do. That would be good enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I would be underselling myself if I said I don't want more, and I'm not aiming for more. My mentor, he always uses that expression, that quote, aim for the moon, because either way, even if you miss, you're still in amongst the stars. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. I know what I want, and I know that I'm willing to die trying to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if it doesn't happen, I know that I could end my life could end, and I'd be okay with what I've accomplished so far and what I'm trying to accomplish. So yeah, I'm still working on it.
No, I got you, man. And,
As to answer your question, the other one, because I wanted to make sure I got back to that.
For sure.
The what I'm looking forward to, or what to look forward to. I'm currently writing a series. I don't know if you're familiar with the show Easy.
Easy. No. Give me a little synopsis of that. Yeah.
Easy is it's an anthology series about these different people that live in Chicago, and it's every episode is about a different person in their little corner of the world, their little corner of Chicago and stuff like that. And so it's over now, but it's on Netflix. But I've been thinking a lot about doing my own anthology series, because the idea that I have is that ultimately anthology episodes are like Twilight Zone and Black Mirror, things like that. They're nothing more than just short films. So I'm thinking about I'm writing an anthology series where the theme is mental health. So each episode is about a different person dealing with mental health and mental health issues. And some of the different aspects of that mental health, how it may impact a relationship, how it may impact a person, whatever. But it's going to be a series. I want to do maybe 5 or 6 episodes, and each being an anthology, and then string them together as a web series that I put out, and then I hopefully can be able to, if it comes out well, use it as a concept that I can pitch to some of the bigger studios out there as a series. So that's what I'm aiming to start doing in the coming, by the end of the year. And between now and then, though, I'm going to be working on a couple of micro films, which are just like 1-minute films, like the one that's on my YouTube currently, the coffee, the counterweight, which I did, which was like the first thing I ever shot. And then I'm planning on doing a couple more of those, a music video, and then this movie I wrote called Survive. It's another short film that I plan on doing. So I have a few projects that I have lined up as well. So yeah, that's what I'm really hyped about.
That's great, man. That's a lot of things to keep your creative juices flowing. And you know what people say, busy is good. You're gonna be very busy. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it keeps me out of my head. So yeah, I'm all for being busy.
No, I got you, man. I'm looking forward to seeing, your the first project, the mental illness anthology. I'm huge on anthologies. Twilight Zone is my jam. Black Mirror is my jam. There's this other one that just came up. I don't remember. I don't know. You ever seen? It's called 404. It's like they try to make it Black Mirror-ish with Twilight Zone-ish, but super updated. It was supposed to be like Error 404. You know how like we look on the internet and that comes up. That's what it was kind of about, or kind of play on. Yeah.
I love anthologies, man. Oat Studio, that Guillermo del Toro one that just came out on Netflix. I forget what it's called, but
that's
like a bunch of a bunch of like short films that are horror films, and plus the animated one, like Love, Death and Robots or whatever. I love anthologies, and I think it's the perfect way to really master filmmaking, as well as it's just easier, because like what I found is really hard to get people, like getting cast and crew and things like that for like a TV show is really hard, because you need to get people like every single day, like not every single day, but like week after week after week. If you do like an anthology, it's like, no, I don't need the same people. I can work with different people and for each project, and then just string them together with a simple theme, and it all works out.
No, I got you. Man, I would ask you, what's been a new, like before you head out, but I want to ask you, what's been some kind of either movie you'd recommend or a TV show I should check out that just like hit you different recently?
Well, do you want a classic film or do you want something more modern?
Give me something more modern this time around.
Okay, something more modern. Surprisingly, A Knock at the Cabin, I think is what it's called. That new M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah, what you think?
I'm not a
of
big fan of him, but I thought that movie was fantastic. More so for the cinematography than the story, but it was really good. I really enjoyed it.
I got you. I gotta recommend to you Shrinking. You ever heard of Shrinking?
No. Wait, is that the one on Apple TV about the therapist who stops like being nice or whatever to people?
Yeah, it's Jason Segel, Harrison Ford. Yeah,
I've seen the advertisement. I've been meaning to watch it. I'm gonna have to check it out now.
It's definitely, it's not him being mean. It's more like him just doing unorthodox ways to do therapy, and I'm like, okay, I'm all for that. But it's been great. It's the comedy hits, and it is deep. I don't know if you ever watched Ted Lasso, but it's kind of like that, where it's like it feels good, but also very, hits you in the heart sometimes.
Okay, I'll check it out for sure.
Any last things you'd like to add before we head out of here, though?
I just want to say thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it. And for anybody that's listening, if you're interested in hearing the podcast, the Mentally Ill Filmmaker podcast, which is pretty much just a podcast where I go over the challenges, the trials and tribulations of becoming a filmmaker, as well as how to manage mental health and mental health issues. So even if you're not a filmmaker and you're just looking for tips on how to deal with some of the mental health stuff that's going on, it's a great listen. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. My favorite place to look for it, though, is my website. That's www.mentally-illfilmmaker.com. You can even leave a voice note so that I can respond to any questions or tips or suggestions that you have. So yeah, that's about it.
Right on, man. And I want to thank you again, Jared, for coming through. And
of course, no doubt.
do want to make this as clear as you made it as clear to me, but I'm proud of you too, dog. So
thank you, man. Thank you.
Keep doing your thing. Yeah, I'll be reaching out soon enough with the kids, probably. They always want to talk to like interesting folk, and I think you are one of those interesting folks, man.
Thank you. All right, man, no doubt. Just I'm always just a DM away.
For sure. I want to thank the folks for tuning in. If you listen on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, appreciate your time as well. Please remember to reach out, reach forward. As always, much love, and we'll catch you guys next time on 34 Questions. Peace. And it kind of fades out from there, man.